to save the giant Apache sister from a forced marriage. The poor rancher offered a fake marriage. The small town at the edge of the Apache lands was waking up to another hot day, but for Leela, it was anything but ordinary. She was already awake, as she always was, towering over everyone with her height and presence. Leela was known as the giant Apache sister, not just because of her height, but also because of her strong personality and the courage she carried in her heart. People respected her, and many admired her quietly, though she never let anyone see her pride. She had a gentle smile and soft eyes, but behind that, there was strength few could match. Leela lived with her family in a modest home at the edge of the town. Her father, a respected member of the Apache community, worked hard to provide for the family, though he often worried about the future. Her mother, wise and patient, taught Leela everything she knew about life, from tending the small garden in their yard to understanding the values and traditions of their people. Leela had younger siblings who looked up to her, often following her around and trying to imitate her bravery and kindness. She loved them dearly and protected them fiercely, like any older sister would. This morning, however, there was tension in the air. Leela's father had received a visit from a wealthy landowner from a neighboring town. The man had heard about Leela's stature, her beauty, and her strong reputation. He had decided he wanted her for his family, not caring at all whether she wanted it or not. In those days, and in many places even today, sometimes the wishes of young women were ignored, and families were pressured by wealth, social status, or tradition. Leela's family had no choice but to listen to the demands of the powerful man, or so they feared. As Leela walked outside to fetch water from the well, she noticed the worry etched on her parents' faces. She could see the unease in the way her father's hands shook as he held the water bucket, and the way her mother's eyes darted nervously around the street. She had learned early in life to read these signs. Something serious was happening, she realized, something that could change her life forever. Leela returned inside and asked quietly, "Mother, father, what is happening?" Her father sighed, a heavy sound that seemed to carry the weight of the desert itself. "Leela," he began, "there is a wealthy man from the town. He wants to marry you. He has wealth, power, and he will not take no for an answer." Leela's eyes widened. She felt a wave of shock and fear, but also a burning anger deep inside. The thought of being forced into a marriage with someone she did not love, someone who might not even respect her, made her stomach churn. She knew her family wanted to protect her, but the pressure of the man's influence and money made them hesitant to refuse. The town and the surrounding community often valued wealth over freedom, and this situation was no different. I will not marry him," Leela said firmly, her voice steady despite the fear. I will not give my life to someone I do not love. Please, father, mother, we must find another way." Her mother reached out and held her hands. "Leela, we understand, but this is dangerous. The man is powerful. If he does not get what he wants, he may try to harm us or make things very difficult. We are afraid, my daughter. We are afraid for you and for all of us." Leela's mind raced. She had always been brave, but this was different. This was not a fight she could win with her strength alone. She needed help, and she needed a plan. At that moment, she thought of Tamaz, a young rancher who lived a few miles away on the edge of town. Tamaz was poor, with only a small piece of land to his name, but he was known for his courage, his honesty, and his cleverness. He worked from sunrise to sunset, tending his animals and land, but he also had a reputation for helping those in need, even when it was risky. Leela had seen him from afar many times, and though they had never been close friends, she had always respected him for his integrity and strength of character. She decided she must speak to him. Perhaps, she thought, he could help. She quickly made her way to Tamaz's small ranch, the morning sun warm on her back and the sand crunching under her feet. She found him feeding his horses, his hands rough and strong from years of labor, his face focused but kind. "Tamaz," she called, trying to keep her voice steady. I need your help." He looked up, surprised to see her, and immediately sensed the seriousness in her voice. "Leela, what is wrong?" She explained everything. The visit from the wealthy landowner, the threat of forced marriage, the fear in her family's hearts, and her determination not to give in. Tamaz listened carefully, his brow furrowed, his jaw tight. When she finished, he did not speak for a moment, letting the weight of her words settle in. "This is serious," he said finally. "Very serious, but I believe we can find a way. You will not have to marry someone you do not want to. I will help you, Leela, I promise." Leela felt a spark of hope for the first time that morning. You would do that, even though it could be dangerous," Tamaz nodded. "Yes, because freedom is more important than wealth or power, and you deserve to make your own choices." The two of them spent the rest of the morning planning. They knew it would not be easy. The wealthy man had influence and money, and he would not accept a simple refusal. They needed a plan that would protect Leela, satisfy the expectations of the family and community, and outsmart the landowner without putting anyone in unnecessary danger. As they spoke, Leela began to understand the depth of her own courage. She realized that being brave did not mean facing danger alone. It meant making careful choices, asking for help when needed, and standing firm for what was right. Tamaz, meanwhile, was impressed by her determination and wisdom. He had known many people in his life, but few had the strength and clarity that Leela possessed. By midday, they had agreed on a bold plan, one that would require careful acting, trust, and a bit of clever thinking. Tamaz would offer a fake marriage to Leela. The idea was simple. By pretending to marry her, he could protect her from the unwanted suitor, giving her family peace and keeping Leela's freedom intact. It was risky, yes, but it was also the best option they had. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the desert floor, Leela felt a mix of fear and excitement. She was about to take her first steps toward a future she could control. She knew challenges lay ahead, but for the first time, she felt a sense of hope. Hope that she could face what came next, with courage, intelligence, and the help of someone she could trust. That evening, as Leela returned home, her family could see a change in her. She walked with purpose, her head held high, her heart determined. They did not yet know the full details of the plan, but they could feel her resolve. Leela had decided that she would not be a passive victim of circumstance. She would fight for her freedom, protect her family, and take control of her own life, even if it meant walking a dangerous path. And so, the first chapter of her journey began, not with violence or anger, but with courage, wisdom, and the quiet determination of a young woman who refused to surrender her future to the whims of others. In the desert town, as the stars began to appear one by one in the clear night sky, Leela prepared herself for the challenges to come. She was ready to face whatever obstacles lay ahead, knowing that the strength within her, combined with the help of an honest and brave rancher, could turn even the most impossible situation into a chance for freedom, hope, and triumph. The days following Leela's visit to Tamaz were filled with nervous energy. The desert town continued its routines, the merchants opening their shops, the children running barefoot across the sandy streets, and the animals grazing under the warm sun. But beneath the surface, Leela's life had changed forever. The threat of the wealthy landowner lingered like a dark cloud, and every shadow seemed to whisper of the danger that could come at any moment. Leela and Tamaz met secretly every morning before the town awoke. They knew that even a small rumor of their plan reaching the wrong ears could spell disaster. Each meeting was a mix of careful planning and practice. Tamaz taught Leela how to respond calmly if the landowner asked questions, how to maintain composure if rumors spread, and how to appear confident even when fear threatened to take hold. Leela, in turn, shared her knowledge of the town, the people, and the subtle social pressures that could work in their favor. Together, They formed a strategy that was equal parts cleverness and courage. The first challenge was convincing Leela's family that the plan could work. Her parents were worried, not just about their daughter's safety, but about the reputation of their entire household. "Tamaz, are you sure this is the right way?" her father asked one afternoon, his hands rough from years of labor, gripping the small table as though it could hold him steady. "If the landowner discovers that this marriage is fake, what then? Could he harm us?" Tamaz met his gaze with steady eyes. "I understand your fears, but if we do nothing, he will take what he wants. If we act carefully, we can protect Leela without anyone being hurt. We will not deceive maliciously, we will protect, we will safeguard freedom, and we will keep her honor intact." Her mother, though still anxious, nodded slowly. She had always trusted Tamaz's heart, even if his pockets were empty. She could see the determination in his eyes, the kind of bravery that came from genuine concern rather than ambition. "We will trust you, Tamaz," she said, "but you must promise to be careful. Leela is strong, but she is still our daughter, and we cannot bear to see her harmed." With the family's hesitant blessing, Leela and Tamaz turned their attention to preparing for the public part of the plan. They needed to make the fake marriage look real, not just to the landowner, but to anyone in the town who might be watching. This required careful attention to detail: how Leela dressed, how they interacted in public, and how the ceremony would appear to witnesses. Tamaz worked tirelessly, even as he continued his daily chores on the ranch. He mended fences, fed his animals, and tended his small crops, but his mind was always half on the plan. He crafted a story that would explain the union without raising suspicion, a bond formed out of mutual respect, the kind of partnership that would be acceptable in both the Apache community and the neighboring town. Leela practiced walking beside him, her tall frame poised and confident, and together they rehearsed the gestures and words that would make the marriage appear genuine. Despite their careful planning, danger was never far away. The wealthy landowner had begun to send men into the town to inquire subtly about Leela. Villagers whispered to one another, some fearing the landowner, others admiring the courage it took to resist him. Every time a stranger asked about Leela or mentioned the landowner, her heart raced. Tamaz would take her aside, whispering words of reassurance, and together they would smile and act as though nothing was wrong. But the challenges were not only external. Leela and Tamaz faced internal struggles as well. Pretending to be in love was not easy. Each smile, each word of affection they practiced, was a reminder of the dangerous deception they were living. Leela sometimes felt guilt for having to act in a way that did not match her true feelings, and Tamaz struggled to separate his concern for her safety from his growing admiration and respect. They both knew that the fake marriage was temporary, a shield against the landowner's cruelty, yet the act itself carried emotional weight that neither had anticipated. One afternoon, while they were walking through the town square under the hot sun, they encountered one of the landowner's men. The man lingered, eyeing them closely, his face expressionless but his gaze sharp. Leela felt a chill run down her spine. Tamaz instinctively stepped closer to her, guiding her as if he were shielding her from a storm. "Good day," the man said, his voice polite but firm. "How are things with you and this arrangement?" Tamaz smiled, keeping his tone calm and natural. "We are well, thank you. Everything is as it should be. The families have agreed and we are planning a ceremony soon." The man nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied them. "Very good. Tell the family we will be visiting soon. The landowner wants to see the union with his own eyes." As the man walked away, Leela's knees felt weak. The visit had been a warning, a reminder that the landowner was not someone to be underestimated. Tamaz held her hand briefly, squeezing it reassuringly. "We knew this wouldn't be easy," he said softly, "but we can do it. We must be careful and we must stay strong. Everything we are doing is to protect you, Nothing will harm you as long as we stick to the plan. In the days that followed, preparations for the fake marriage intensified. Villagers who were sympathetic offered help. Some crafted simple but convincing garments. Others volunteered to act as witnesses for the ceremony. Leela's family, though anxious, worked alongside them, learning to trust the cleverness and determination of the young rancher. Every small task, every detail added to the authenticity of the plan. Even with the careful preparations, tension was high. Leela often found herself lying awake at night, staring at the stars above the desert, thinking of the consequences if anything went wrong. She imagined the landowner discovering the truth, the danger that could come to her family, and the fear that might paralyze her. But each time doubt crept in, she reminded herself of why she was doing this, not just for herself but for her family, for her freedom, and for the hope that she could control her own destiny. Tamaz, too, faced moments of doubt. The responsibility of protecting Leela weighed heavily on him. He could lose everything if the plan failed, his land, his reputation, even his life in some worst-case scenarios. But he also knew that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. And he could not let fear prevent him from doing what was right. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the desert in golden light, Leela and Tamaz sat together quietly, planning their next steps. They spoke softly, aware of the growing scrutiny in the town. "We must make the ceremony believable," Tamaz said. "Every detail, every gesture. If we succeed, the landowner will not be able to interfere. And if we fail, well, we cannot think of that. We must focus on what we can control." Leela nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "I know, I am ready. We can do this. I trust you, Tamaz, and I trust myself." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Garments were sewn, arrangements made, and rehearsals conducted in secret corners of the town. Leela learned to smile naturally when speaking to others, to act affectionately without letting real emotions slip through, and to maintain her composure even when the landowner's men appeared unexpectedly. Tamaz guided her through every step, his presence a steadying force in a world that seemed increasingly uncertain. Through it all, their bond grew stronger. Though their relationship was built on a shared plan rather than love, there was respect, admiration, and a quiet understanding between them. Leela appreciated Tamaz's bravery and intelligence, while he admired her strength and wisdom. Together, they became a team, facing the challenges of the outside world while protecting one another and their families. Despite the constant tension, moments of humor and lightness occasionally broke through. They shared small jokes, laughed at minor mishaps during rehearsals, and found ways to ease the stress of the situation. These moments reminded them both that even in the most dangerous circumstances, there could still be hope, joy, and a sense of normalcy. As the day of the ceremony approached, the landowner's men began to visit more frequently, asking questions and making subtle threats. Leela and Tamaz remained vigilant, carefully keeping their plan intact while ensuring that no one suspected the truth. The entire town seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when the fake marriage would either succeed or crumble under scrutiny. And so, the days passed in a tense rhythm of preparation, vigilance, and quiet determination. Every sunrise brought new challenges, every sunset a reminder of the danger that loomed. Leela and Tamaz knew that the coming days would test their courage, their intelligence, and their bond in ways they had never imagined. But they were ready. They had each other, they had a plan, and they had the courage to face whatever lay ahead. The stage was set, the players in position, and the desert town awaited the unfolding of a story that would be remembered for years to come, a story of bravery, cleverness, and the unyielding fight for freedom. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert, casting long shadows. Across the small town, Leela and Tamaz were awake before anyone else, as they always were, preparing for what might be the most dangerous day yet. The news had reached them that the wealthy landowner himself would be visiting the town to see the marriage in person. This was the moment that could either secure Leela's freedom or shatter everything they had worked so hard to protect. Leela dressed carefully, choosing a simple but elegant dress that reflected both her Apache heritage and the modesty of her family. She braided her long, dark hair, making sure it looked neat and regal, as if she were stepping into a real wedding. Tamaz, meanwhile, adjusted his worn but tidy jacket and checked the documents they had prepared as proof of their marriage arrangement. Every detail mattered. They could not afford even the smallest mistake. As they stepped out into the street, the town seemed unusually quiet. The market stalls were sparsely populated, and the usual chatter of merchants and children had been replaced by an anxious silence. Villagers whispered to one another as they passed, glancing at Leela and Tamaz with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Everyone knew the landowner's reputation and feared the trouble his presence could bring. Yet many also admired the courage of the two young people who dared to resist him. Tamaz held Leela's hand lightly as they walked, his grip firm and reassuring. "Remember," he whispered, "we have prepared for this. Stay calm, act naturally, and trust me. Everything will be fine." Leela nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt a mixture of fear, excitement, and determination. She knew that the landowner would test them, that he would try to uncover the truth behind the fake marriage. But she also knew that Tamaz was clever and brave, and together they had prepared for every possible scenario. When the landowner arrived, his presence was immediately commanding. He was a tall man, dressed in fine clothes that gleamed under the morning sun. His eyes were sharp, calculating, and cold, scanning the street as if he owned everything around him. He stepped down from his carriage and straightened his posture, radiating authority and power. His men followed closely behind, ready to carry out his orders without question. Leela and Tamaz approached him with measured steps, their expressions calm and composed. The landowner's eyes fell on Leela first, assessing her as if she were an object rather than a person. Leela held her head high, meeting his gaze with quiet confidence. She refused to show fear, knowing that her composure was as much a shield as any physical protection. "Good morning," the landowner said, his voice smooth but laced with authority. "I have come to see the marriage arrangement for myself. Tell me, how are things progressing?" Tamaz bowed slightly, keeping his tone polite and respectful. "Good morning, sir. Everything is proceeding as planned. The families have agreed and the ceremony is ready. We have ensured that everything is in order." The landowner's eyes narrowed. He walked slowly around them, examining their gestures, their clothes, their mannerisms. "I want to be certain that this marriage is legitimate," he said, his voice sharp now. "I will not be deceived. Any dishonesty will have consequences." Leela felt a shiver run down her spine, but she forced herself to remain steady. She remembered Tamaz's advice: act naturally, stay calm, and do not let fear show. She smiled politely, her tall frame poised and confident. "Sir, we understand your concern," she said clearly. "Everything has been done with respect for our families and traditions. You will see that all is in order." Tamaz handed the landowner the prepared documents, certificates, witness statements, and letters from villagers who were aware of the arrangement. The landowner took them, scanning each page with a critical eye. He muttered to himself occasionally, and Leela could feel the tension building in the air like static before a storm. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, the landowner finally looked up, his expression unreadable. "Very well," he said slowly. "The ceremony will take place. I will witness it myself. If this is true, then the marriage is legitimate. If not," his voice trailed off, but the threat was clear. The ceremony had to be perfect. Every detail mattered: the timing, the placement of witnesses, the way Leela and Tamaz spoke and moved. Villagers gathered discreetly, knowing that they could play a part in making the arrangement appear real. Some stood near the edges, ready to nod or affirm the union if necessary. Others helped with small tasks, like arranging flowers, preparing simple decorations, or guiding Leela through the ceremonial steps. When the moment arrived, Leela and Tamaz stepped forward together, their hands brushing lightly as they took their places. Tamaz spoke first, his voice steady and clear. "We are united in respect and friendship, and we commit to supporting one another as our families and communities agree." Leela followed, her voice strong despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "We pledge to honor our families and traditions, to uphold our responsibilities, and to face whatever challenges may come with courage and integrity." The landowner's men watched closely, but the villagers' careful acting helped make the ceremony appear legitimate. Witnesses nodded, some whispering affirmations, while others offered subtle gestures of approval. Every movement, every word was calculated to create the illusion of a real marriage. Throughout the ceremony, Leela remained composed, though her heart raced. She stole quick glances at Tamaz, finding reassurance in his calm presence. He gave her a subtle nod, signaling that everything was going according to plan. It was a dangerous game, but they were playing it well. Once the ceremony was complete, the landowner stepped forward, his eyes still sharp and evaluating. He looked at Leela and Tamaz for a long moment, then spoke. "Very well. It seems everything is in order. You have respected my concerns and the arrangement appears legitimate. I will not interfere further for now." Leela exhaled quietly, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. The immediate threat had passed, but she knew that vigilance was still necessary. The landowner's words were polite, but they carried the unmistakable undertone of warning. He had not yet been fully convinced, and any misstep in the future could reignite his attention. After he left, Leela and Tamaz shared a brief, quiet smile. There was relief, yes, but also an understanding that the most dangerous part of their plan had only just begun. They had successfully outsmarted the landowner for now, but the act of pretending, the deception, and the tension had taken a toll on both of them. In the days following the ceremony, life in the town returned to a semblance of normalcy, though Leela and Tamaz remained cautious. Villagers whispered about the cleverness and bravery of the two young people, but many also feared potential repercussions. The landowner's influence was still strong, and his men occasionally appeared to observe the couple, testing whether their union was genuine. Despite the stress and danger, Leela began to feel a sense of empowerment. She had faced a powerful adversary with courage and intelligence. She had taken control of her life in a way that few young women in her position could. And she had done it with the support of someone she trusted implicitly. Tamaz, for his part, felt a growing respect and admiration for Leela. He had always been brave, but witnessing her strength, intelligence, and calm under pressure deepened his feelings of admiration and loyalty. Yet, the challenges were far from over. The landowner was not a man who would easily forget or forgive. He would continue to test, to probe, to look for weaknesses. Leela and Tamaz knew that their journey was only partway complete. They had won a critical battle, but the war to protect her freedom, her family, and their own safety was ongoing. Through it all, they learned valuable lessons. Leela realized that courage was not just about physical strength, but also about intelligence, strategy, and the ability to act under pressure. Tamaz learned that true bravery included protecting others even at personal risk, and that sometimes the heart mattered more than wealth, power, or social standing. Together, they discovered the power of trust, teamwork, and the quiet but unyielding strength that comes from facing danger with clarity and purpose. As the sun set over the desert, casting golden light over the town, Leela and Tamaz sat together quietly, reflecting on the day. They knew more challenges lay ahead, but for the first time, they allowed themselves a small moment of relief. They had faced a powerful adversary and emerged unscathed. They had protected Leela's freedom, upheld their plan, and strengthened their bond in the process. And in that moment, beneath the vast sky filled with stars, they understood something vital. Courage, intelligence, and careful planning could triumph over power and intimidation. They had created a shield of cleverness and bravery, and as long as they continued to act wisely, no threat, no matter how powerful, could take away the freedom and dignity they fought to protect. The days after the ceremony passed in a tense, uneasy rhythm. Though the landowner had left the town, his presence still lingered like a shadow over Layla, Tamaz, and the entire community. Villagers whispered behind closed doors, sharing stories of the cleverness of the young rancher and the giant Apache sister, but there was also fear. The landowner's wealth and influence could reach beyond the town, and nobody knew if or when he might return. Leela found herself thinking constantly about the future. Though the immediate threat had been neutralized, the challenges of maintaining the deception weighed heavily on her mind. Every encounter in the market, every conversation with neighbors, required careful thought. She had to act as if she were genuinely married, smile and laugh at the right moments, and respond to questions with calm, natural gestures. It was exhausting, and some nights she lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how long they could continue the charade. Tamaz, too, faced increasing pressure. Maintaining the appearance of a real marriage required him to act differently in public, to show attentiveness and care beyond what he normally displayed. He spent long hours preparing explanations for any curious villagers or wandering outsiders. On top of that, his ranch still demanded his attention. Feeding the animals, repairing fences, and tending to crops left little time for rest. Yet he persevered, driven by his determination to protect Leela and her family. Despite their careful efforts, not everything went smoothly. Rumors began to circulate, subtle and sometimes misleading. Some villagers whispered that Leela and Tamaz were truly in love, while others speculated that the wealthy landowner might soon return to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his. The constant scrutiny created tension between Leela and Tamaz, though neither spoke openly about it at first. Each was aware that the other carried their own fears and burdens, but pride and caution made them reluctant to express them. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Leela and Tamaz sat on the edge of the ranch, quietly discussing the situation. Leela's voice was soft but firm. "Tamaz, I know we are doing this to protect my family, but sometimes I feel trapped. It's strange to act as though we are married when our hearts are not truly involved. I worry that this act could cause misunderstandings or even harm the people we are trying to protect." Tamaz nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I feel the same way, Leela. Every day I worry about what could happen if someone discovers the truth, but we have to remember why we are doing this. It's not about us, it's about your safety, your freedom, and the well-being of your family. The moment we lose sight of that, we risk everything." Leela looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and respect. "I trust you, Tamaz. I trust that you will do everything in your power to keep me safe, but I also want to make sure we do not lose ourselves in this deception. We must remember who we are, even as we pretend for the world." Tamaz smiled faintly. "You are right. We will not let the act define us. We will play the part when necessary, but our true selves will remain intact." Their conversation that evening strengthened their bond. They realized that their partnership was more than a clever plan. It was a mutual trust built on respect, courage, and shared responsibility. They were learning to navigate complex social pressures while remaining true to their own values, a lesson that neither had anticipated when they first devised the plan. Yet, as the days passed, new challenges arose. The landowner's men continued to watch from a distance, subtle but persistent. They asked questions disguised as casual conversation, observed the couple's movements, and tried to detect inconsistencies in their story. Tamaz and Leela had to remain constantly vigilant, adjusting their behavior to match expectations while avoiding suspicion. One day, a misunderstanding almost jeopardized everything. A visiting merchant, unaware of the plan, commented loudly in the market, "I hear Leela and Tamaz are married. How strange, isn't it? He's poor and she's strong and respected. Can this truly work?" The word spread quickly, reaching the ears of a few villagers who were unaware of the situation. Fear rippled through the community. Leela felt a pang of anxiety as she realized that the smallest comment could spiral out of control. Tamaz immediately guided her to a quiet corner, speaking in a low, urgent voice. "We must remain calm. Explain the truth carefully if anyone asks directly, but do not let panic spread. Our plan is strong and the ceremony was convincing. We can handle this." Leela nodded, her heart pounding. She realized that courage was not just about facing external threats, but also about controlling her own fears. Every day tested her patience, her wisdom, and her ability to think clearly under pressure. Meanwhile, Tamaz faced practical challenges on the ranch. Some animals fell ill, fences needed urgent repair, and harsh desert winds threatened the crops. Balancing these responsibilities with the demands of the plan required ingenuity and perseverance. He often worked long into the night, exhausted but determined to protect Leela and her family. He never complained, and his dedication did not go unnoticed by the villagers, many of whom quietly offered assistance. Amid these pressures, Leela and Tamaz discovered small joys that helped them cope. They would share meals together, watch the desert sun set, and occasionally laugh at minor mishaps. These moments of lightness reminded them that even in difficult times, there could be hope, connection, and resilience. They learned that courage did not mean constant seriousness. It also meant finding strength in friendship, humor, and shared determination. One afternoon, as Leela walked through the town, she overheard a group of children playing nearby. They were talking about her and Tamaz, imagining adventures and heroic deeds. Leela smiled quietly to herself, realizing that their story had already begun to inspire others, even unintentionally. It reminded her that the choices they made mattered not only to themselves, but to the wider community. Their courage and cleverness had ripple effects, showing others that intelligence, bravery, and moral integrity could overcome fear and power. Despite these small victories, the shadow of the landowner remained. Leela and Tamaz knew that he could return at any moment, seeking to assert his authority or uncover the truth. They had to remain vigilant, always thinking several steps ahead. This constant awareness required mental strength and emotional resilience. They learned to anticipate threats, develop contingencies, and rely on the support of those they trusted. As the weeks passed, the couple began to see the fruits of their efforts. The town slowly adjusted to the marriage, and most villagers accepted the arrangement without question. Leela's family felt relief, knowing that their daughter's freedom and dignity were protected. The landowner's influence seemed to wane, at least for the time being, though Leela and Tamaz remained cautious. Through these experiences, Leela discovered a profound inner strength. She realized that her courage, wisdom, and determination were just as powerful as her physical stature. She learned to navigate a world filled with complex social pressures, threats, and expectations, while remaining true to herself. Tamaz, in turn, deepened his understanding of responsibility, sacrifice, and the quiet power of integrity. He learned that protecting someone else's freedom often required personal risk, patience, and unwavering commitment. Together, they became a formidable team, balancing strategy with empathy, strength with intelligence, and courage with caution. Their experiences taught them that challenges, no matter how daunting, could be overcome with careful planning, trust, and determination. By the time the desert sun sank behind the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the town. Leela and Tamaz reflected on all they had endured. They understood that the greatest challenges were not only external but internal as well. Maintaining the deception required emotional strength, mental clarity, and constant vigilance. Yet through it all, they had grown stronger, wiser, and more resilient. And in that quiet evening, under a sky full of stars, they realized a profound truth. Real courage was not the absence of fear or difficulty, but the ability to act with intelligence, kindness, and integrity even in the face of uncertainty. They had protected freedom, preserved honor, and shown that cleverness, bravery, and trust could triumph over fear and intimidation. Their journey was far from over, but Part 4 had cemented their growth. They had faced deep conflicts, navigated emotional challenges, and learned invaluable lessons about trust, responsibility, and the power of human resilience. They were prepared for whatever the future might hold, strengthened by their experiences and by the bond they had formed. The desert town had settled into a quiet rhythm after the tense weeks of planning, rehearsing, and pretending. The landowner had not returned, though his presence remained a distant memory in the minds of some villagers. Leela and Tamaz continued to live their lives under the careful veil of their fake marriage, but the danger that once hovered over them had begun to fade. The couple had succeeded in their plan, but they both knew that vigilance and wisdom were still necessary. Leela walked through the streets with a calm grace, her tall frame standing out, yet she moved with ease among the villagers. People no longer whispered as much. Instead, they nodded respectfully when she passed. Her family watched her with pride, relieved that the young woman they loved and protected had retained her freedom and dignity. It was a victory not just for Leela, but for the entire community, a reminder that courage and intelligence could overcome even the most powerful threats. Tamaz, too, found a quiet sense of accomplishment. His work on the ranch continued, demanding his attention and energy, but he felt lighter knowing that the worst was behind them. He and Leela shared quiet smiles as they passed each other in the market or walked side by side through the desert, their bond strengthened by the trials they had faced together. Despite the outward calm, the couple continued to navigate the delicate balance of their fake marriage. Leela maintained the appearance of affection and companionship in public, but privately, she and Tamaz shared open, honest conversations about their fears, hopes, and dreams. They laughed together, planned for the future, and reflected on the lessons they had learned. Each moment of trust and understanding deepened the connection between them. One afternoon, Leela's father approached Tamaz as he repaired a section of fence on the ranch. His hands were worn and rough from years of labor, but his eyes shone with gratitude and respect. "Tamaz," he said, his voice steady, "I want to thank you. You have done more than protect my daughter. You have given our family hope, safety, and peace. We are forever grateful." Tamaz smiled humbly, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It was not just me," he replied. "Leela's courage, wisdom, and strength made all of this possible. I only helped her navigate the path she already had the power to walk." Leela's father nodded, pride evident in his eyes. "You are right. She is strong, but together, you have shown the town that cleverness, bravery, and trust can overcome fear and power. You have taught us all something important." In the days that followed, the town began to embrace a sense of normalcy. Villagers went about their daily lives, children played in the streets, and the market buzzed with activity. Leela and Tamaz continued their careful public appearances, but privately, they allowed themselves moments of reflection and joy. They spent time walking through the desert, talking about their dreams, and planning a future that no longer felt overshadowed by danger. Through these quiet moments, their friendship grew into a deeper bond. They discovered that love was not always immediate or dramatic. It could develop slowly, nurtured by trust, respect, and shared experiences. Leela admired Tamaz's integrity, courage, and patience, while he admired her strength, intelligence, and unwavering determination. Together, they began to imagine a life built on genuine connection rather than pretense. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Leela and Tamaz sat on a hill overlooking the town. The wind carried the faint scent of desert flowers, and the sky stretched endlessly above them. Leela spoke softly, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and reflection. "We have come a long way, Tamaz. I never imagined that I would have to face so many challenges, or that someone would be willing to risk so much to protect me. I am grateful more than I can say." Tamaz turned to her, his expression warm and earnest. "And I am grateful for you, Leela. You have taught me what true courage looks like. You faced danger, uncertainty, and fear, yet you never gave up. I am proud to have walked this path with you." They sat in silence for a moment, watching as the town below settled into the quiet of evening. The hardships of the past week seemed distant now, softened by the lessons they had learned and the bond they had formed. They understood that while the fake marriage had begun as a clever plan to protect Leela, it had grown into something much more meaningful, a partnership built on trust, respect, and mutual care. The following weeks brought further reassurance. The landowner showed no signs of returning, and his influence over the town began to fade. Leela's family could finally breathe without fear, and the community gradually recognized the cleverness and bravery of the young rancher who had protected the giant Apache sister. Stories of their courage spread, not as gossip, but as lessons in courage, intelligence, and moral integrity. Leela and Tamaz also began to plan for the future in a more practical sense. Tamaz worked to improve his small ranch, making repairs, expanding crops, and caring for his animals with renewed determination. Leela assisted when she could, learning about farming, animal care, and the subtle skills needed to run a successful ranch. Together, they envisioned a life that was safe, productive, and free from the threats that had once loomed over them. Through these efforts, they discovered that true freedom was not just the absence of danger, but the presence of choice, agency, and responsibility. Leela's freedom had been protected by cleverness and courage, but maintaining that freedom required continued effort, wisdom, and partnership. They understood that life would always present challenges, but with trust, planning, and bravery, those challenges could be met successfully. Their relationship also continued to evolve. The bond that had begun with a shared plan and mutual respect began to grow into genuine affection. They laughed together, shared stories, and found comfort in each other's presence. Leela no longer saw Tamaz only as a protector. She began to see him as a friend, confidant, and eventually someone she could imagine building a life with. Tamaz, in turn, felt a deepening respect and admiration for Leela, recognizing that her courage and intelligence were as valuable as any wealth or power. One day, as they worked together in the fields, Leela turned to Tamaz with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if we hadn't acted?" she asked. Tamaz paused, considering her question carefully. "Yes," he said finally, "and it scares me. But I also know that we did act, and because of that you are free, your family is safe, and we have learned lessons we could never have imagined. We have turned fear into action, danger into opportunity, and uncertainty into strength." Leela smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had not known for weeks. "It's true. We have grown stronger, not just because of the plan, but because of what we learned about ourselves and each other." The days turned into weeks, and the town gradually returned to a sense of normalcy. Leela and Tamaz were no longer just the clever young people who had outsmarted a powerful man. They became symbols of resilience, intelligence, and moral courage. Villagers looked to them as examples, not of wealth or status, but of what could be achieved through bravery, clever thinking, and unwavering integrity. One evening, under a sky filled with stars, Leela reflected on the journey she had undertaken. She thought of the fear, the tension, and the uncertainty, but she also thought of the courage, trust, and partnership that had carried her through. She realized that the greatest victory was not just surviving the threat, but growing stronger, wiser, and more self-aware in the process. Tamaz joined her quietly, sitting beside her and gazing at the stars. "We have faced a great challenge," he said softly. "And we have learned so much, not just about courage or cleverness, but about respect, trust, and the importance of standing up for what is right. That is something no one can take away from us." Leela nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and accomplishment. "Yes. And I am grateful for you, Tamaz. You helped me protect my freedom, but you also showed me the strength of partnership, loyalty, and understanding. Together, we have faced danger and come through stronger." The wind blew softly across the desert, carrying the scent of sage and dry earth. It was a peaceful evening, one of many that followed in the weeks after their triumph. Leela and Tamaz sat together, reflecting on the journey, knowing that the challenges of life would continue, but confident that they could face them together. In the end, the story of the giant Apache sister and the poor rancher became more than a tale of cleverness and bravery. It became a story of trust, respect, and moral courage. It showed that even in the face of powerful threats, careful planning, intelligence, and partnership could protect freedom and dignity. It reminded the community, and anyone who would hear the story in the future, that courage was not just about strength or wealth, but about integrity, wisdom, and the willingness to act for what is right. Leela and Tamaz continued their lives with a sense of purpose and hope. Their bond grew stronger, rooted in mutual respect and shared experience. The desert, the town, and the wide-open skies became symbols of their journey, challenging, unpredictable, but full of opportunity and growth. And so, the giant Apache sister and the poor rancher lived on, not as figures defined by wealth, power, or circumstance, but as examples of courage, cleverness, and integrity. They had faced danger, navigated deception, and emerged stronger, teaching a lesson that would endure for generations. True strength lies not in what you have, but in how wisely, bravely, and kindly you act in the face of adversity.